Sairam students. Today we have come up with an exciting and all-time favorite topic, that is story writing. Now this is exciting because we all are very good in cooking good stories. So let us first understand what is a story writing. Storytelling is as old as mankind itself. Even the early cave dwellers must have told stories to their children. Yes, we have heard stories from our parents and grandparents, isn't it, student? With the development of script, stories can be written. The old stories aimed mostly at morals. You have to develop it on the same theme as intended by the introductory lines or by the input. You can't go against the stated theme. Yes, students, you should or you have to stick to the theme given. Of course, it should be related to the given topic. Now let's see what all is involved in a story writing. Firstly, it is a matter of fiction or your imagination. You have to be very creative to write an interesting story. You should use easily understandable and grammatical structure or sentences so that it is easier for the reader to understand the story. And yes, it should go with the natural flow of speech. It should not be very difficult or should not involve lot of dramas. Now let's see how to write a great story. Your story needs to have an introduction, that is the beginning, then body, that is the middle of the story, then conclusion, that is the end of the story. Now let us understand this step by step. The first one is introduction. Now introduction is where we introduce the characters, especially the main character and his or her problem. Now remember students that the introduction of the story is very important. The beginning should be striking and must evoke interest in the reader's mind. Now the next is body. Body is where the action and the plot develops. The main character will face difficulties such as opposition from other people or a challenging environment. Now students, you must develop the plot in the body of your story. Make the story interesting by adding dialogues, character description and actions in a logical and clear manner. You can use interjections and contractions in the conversation. Now the next is conclusion. Conclusion is where the main character achieves a victory over his or her biggest challenge. The resolution should be satisfying and conclusive for the reader. Yes, student, the conclusion is the most important part of the story. The whole story must lead up to it naturally. Now students, these are the key elements of story writing, that is character, setting, plot, conflict, theme, and the last one is ending. Now let us understand this step by step. These are the person which you introduce in the story. They can be some animals or living or non-living things, or you can use your own creativity. Now they must have some meaningful dialogues. Now dialogue should have expressions so that it gives the reader some kind of an interesting material to read and he is attached to the story and he can relate to the story. Now next is characterization. Now characterization means describe the characters. Now to describe the characters you can use some adjectives, some interesting words to describe the characters, like how they look, how they behave, how they dress up, how you can make something different, something interesting. Like for example, If I want to introduce a puppy in my story, so I will describe my puppy something like this. My puppy has a childlike face. He looks very beautiful with green eyes. His fur is silky and smooth. I love my puppy because he is very cuddly and so on. Now you can choose the narrative of the story. It could be the first person or the second person or the third person, and you should maintain it throughout the story. The next is fewer are better. Now try and keep the minimum number of characters. Now this is the golden rule for characters in the story writing. Now the next element is setting. Setting is a time frame and place where the story is set up. Give a good description of setting, give the description of the scene. Keep it shorter and single. Now this is a golden rule for setting, that there should be only one place where the entire story takes place, and it should not be very descriptive. Okay, now it includes the location of the story, the context and the atmosphere where the story is happening. Now, very important, it should be appealing to the five senses of the readers. It means that one should literally feel that he is in the forest or in the market or in the mountain or wherever the story is placed. Now students, the next type of element is the plot. The plot should be simple and interesting. This is the flesh and the muscle of the story. So the whole story revolves around the plot. Students, I would suggest you that don't make the story very simple so that it is not at all interesting, and do not complicate it too much that the reader cannot correlate it. So you have to keep in mind that the person who is reading the story must feel interesting, so that more and more people can read your story. This also includes the start of the story, the body and the end. So this is a basic outline of the story, and you have to link all these three stages with events and actions of the characters. The next point is creatively describe and logically connect the events and actions. Yes students, you have to describe and connect the events and actions, and you should be very creative as to make it more interesting. Now the next type of element is conflict. In this we will first understand inquisitive. Now inquisitive means having or showing interest in learning things. In this you can put some conflicts, some matter of conflicts in your story just to make it more interesting and make the reader more inquisitive. Now the next rule is intense but one. This is a golden rule for conflicts. It should be very intense but one. Now why it should be one? Because in the story, if you have one conflict, it becomes easy and simple to understand. The next rule is resolving the conflict. Now whichever conflict you have introduced, so you can use the characters which you have involved in your story to resolve the conflict. Now the next one is opposition between characters. Now this is a kind of conflict which you can introduce. You can create an opposition between the characters of the stories, and then you can make a balance between these opposite characters. To use these elements in your conflict, they can be mystery, or empowerment or surprise. Now, the next element is theme. Theme is the framework of your story. It includes the plot, setting, conflicts, and characters. All of these have to be in coherence with the theme. Theme should be such that the readers can correlate it and can understand it in easy way. This is the central idea or main belief of the story. This is the backbone of the story. It means it is also called as backbone of the story. Then the last but not the least is the ending. How should you end the story? You should resolve, or you can give a solution by yourself, or it could also be a resolved and a clear-cut outcome. You can resolve the conflict and give a single solution. Then is parallel to the beginning. It could be parallel to the beginning, that is, you can come back in a circle from where you have started the story and you can end it there only. Now students, we will stop this session here and we will continue with the same topic in a next session, and we will cover points to remember while writing a story along with few example exercise. And now let us quickly revise whatever we have learned in this session. We learned different kinds of key elements of story writing, that is character, setting, plot, conflict, theme, and ending. Then we understood characters are the person which you introduce in the story. They can be some animals or living or non-living things, or you can use your own creative ideas. We also understood that they should have some meaningful dialogues. Then the dialogue should have some expression so that it gives the reader some kind of interesting material to read and he is attracted to the story. We also understood that characterization means describing the characters. We can use some adjectives, some interesting words to describe the characters, like how they look, how they behave, how they dress up, and so on. Then we learn fewer is better. Try to keep minimum number of characters. This is the golden rule for character in the story writing. Then we understood about the next type of element, that is setting. Setting is the time frame and place where the story is set up. Then we understood that we must give a good description of the setting. We must describe the scene. Then we also understood that it includes the location of the story, the context, and the atmosphere where the story is happening. We also understood that a plot should be simple and interesting. Plot is the flesh and the muscle of the story, so the whole story revolves around the plots. We also understood that the golden rule for conflict is it should be intense but one. Then resolving the conflict, whichever conflict you have introduced in the story, then you can use the characters involved in it to resolve the conflict. Then we also understood that a theme is a framework of a story. It includes a plot, setting, conflicts, and characters. Then a theme should be such that the reader can correlate the story and can understand it in an easy way. Then this is the central idea, that is the theme is the central idea or the main brief of the story. Now this is also called, that is the theme is also called as a backbone of the story. Then at the end we understood that it could also be resolved and a clear-cut outcome can be provided. Then the ending could be parallel to beginning. It means it could be parallel to the beginning. You can come back in a circle from where you have started the story and end there itself. Alright student, we will stop this session here and we will continue in our next session with this story writing. Alright, see you again. Sairam and take care.